I'm Ben Brown, and I'm the instructor with the Container Garden, and also this is my partner.
I'm Ben Bylsma, and yeah, today we're going to talk about a couple things that you're going to be doing here in June with your garden kits.
Yes. So by now you will have realized with your box, you have your plants in, you have your soil in, and you've watered. And if you overwater again, you don't have to worry because water will come out. You're going to walk around, water will come out through here if you overwater, and again, the plants won't drown, so they'll be okay. But you shouldn't need to do that very often. But yes, so we have the plants all set up. And
today we're going to fertilize them.
It sounds like a good idea. They've been in there a while, they probably need a little pick-me-up. And that smells great, doesn't it, Ben?
This is the same fertilizer we used before, so
what is it a mix of again?
It has some bone meal, some feather meal. It's all stuff that's been composted. It's safe for food, but it does have a smell to it. So I'm going to take it, and you can wear gloves when handling it. I'm just going to wash my hands afterwards. I'm going to sprinkle it all over the surface of my earth box, getting a nice even spread over the soil. I'll probably use maybe a third of one of the bags that came with the kit. Sprinkling it over. We gave you 3 bags. Each bag contains 1 pound of fertilizer, and it should be a third to a half of a pound per month of fertilizer that you need. So you have enough to get you through the whole season now. So now that I spread it out evenly, you can see I still have quite a bit left in my bag for next month. I'm just going to take it, and I'm just scratching the surface of the soil, just mixing it in a tiny bit. So here I've scratched it in. You can see the granules here on the surface of the water. I'm just going to take my fingers, just kind of scratch it around, getting it integrated in to the top layer of soil. That way when Ben waters this in a moment, it won't just all wash around on the surface. It will actually have a chance to have the nutrients leach down into the soil.
Okay, Ben, I'm going to go ahead and give it some water. Is that okay to kind of help water in what you've done?
Yep, I'm going to close up the fertilizer bag so that we don't lose any.
You've done a really good job with this. I'm impressed. You do this professionally.
I do get paid to garden.
What a neat job.
It's a great job.
Okay, so you may have had a couple of warm days in the 90s. And sometimes there's several different things that you want to consider about overheating. And one of them is seeing your plant wilt. And there's several things you can do. Ben, what's one thing that comes to mind for you when you think about hot weather?
Well, the first thing I check when the plants are wilting is whether or not they have enough moisture. And you can do that by checking your soil and by looking down the tube and seeing if you have water down there.
Did you see any water in there?
We do have water in there, yeah.
No.
And sometimes it's just too hot. So even if they have water, you'll start seeing the plants droop a little bit. Generally they'll recover from that, but I don't know, I feel like
we could move them out of the sun too, right?
Yeah, so you could take it, if it's in a spot where it's next to a brick wall where it's getting a lot of heat, maybe take it and move it to a spot where it gets shelter a little bit in the heat of the day, in the middle of the day or early afternoon. You can even sprinkle a little water on the leaves themselves to try and cool them off. We sweat,
right?
Which cools us off. Leaves breathe moisture through their pores underneath the leaf. Leaves are called stoma.
Thank you.
But just getting a little extra moisture on the leaf can just help cool them a little bit as well.
I've used also shade cloth if I couldn't move something.
Oh, yeah.
But ideally,
you bring the shade to the pot instead of moving the pot to the shade.
Right. Actually, when I was growing up, they would have, I don't know if you've seen the wood slab houses that we call shade houses. Mm-hmm. We don't use them so much anymore, but the shade cloth would work. Again, having a shady spot. If you can move this, if like your patio is facing south and you're in an apartment building, you may not have many options.
So then you might want to cover it with something else during that hot part of the day. Something that's not going to smother it.
Right. But the watering, checking the water is a good idea too. And I like the mist, or if you have a mister,
what kind of pests do you think we might have to deal with then?
Oh my gosh, it could be a whole slew of pests. Anything from plant diseases to insects to, oh yes, my favorite, animals. I have a woodchuck in my garden that was like about maybe this big, but it seemed that big.
It looked that big, and it ate like one that was this big.
Right, well, ate some of my plants. Yeah. So there are several different things that I've tried. What have you tried in terms of dealing with like insect pests and what we would have to think about with the box?
On a small scale, I guess the way I normally deal with it is trying to exclude them by kind of keeping the plants around other plants that are also attractive to them. So, but another way, if I have a spot on my pepper plant, for example, that might get heavily infested with aphids, I might just go and actually pinch on the leaf a little bit, not so hard to crush the leaf, but you can squish the bugs on it for those that are brave of heart, or maybe you could use a tissue or a paper towel to do the squeezing if you don't want to touch them yourselves. Exclusion is a good way of dealing with it too, that you can take like that gauzy material, the agribon or the remay,
right,
and cover it up to keep the bugs off. If you have a bunch of plants that you have bugs on and you don't want to crush them by hand, there are a number of pesticides that are available retail-wise. You just want to make sure you read the label and make sure that it says safe for food, because there's a lot of them that are meant for ornamentals and that you shouldn't spray on something you're going to eat.
And I've also heard people actually use water as a spray to get rid of aphids sometimes on their plants.
Oh yeah.
What's your opinion on that? How would you rate that?
Short term it's effective. I mean, somewhat long term too, in the fact that the water physically hitting and knocking the aphids off the plants, that's time when they're not eating, and if they're not eating, they're not going to be reproducing. Unfortunately, they'll just climb right back up the plants and do it again. I've actually vacuumed them off of plants before as well. High value plants that, that they were wrapped. It was a nice flowering vine that was wrapped around it, the structure of the interior of a greenhouse. And I couldn't spray in that space, and so I just took a vacuum and I physically sucked. I just took the whole vine and let it go down the tube, and then I drew the vine out.
Okay, I like that picture. I like it. And for some pests, that would definitely work really well.
Yeah, something small like spider mites, that wouldn't be effective, but for aphids, it worked okay. So Ben, how have you dealt with some of your animal pests?
Oh my gosh, yeah, I have a woodchuck and a squirrel. Actually, you remember Snow White, right?
Yeah.
All of her animals live at my place.
Oh, lovely.
So yes, the deer comes prancing through and nibbles everything. Look, there's one of Snow White's friends there. So anyway, they were just eating my strawberries left and right and mowing down my Jerusalem artichoke. And so I discovered that I could put, over the young ones especially, I used chicken wire and just laid it on top, and also over the strawberries. I have to confess that squirrels are pretty smart, and they will figure out how to get underneath the chicken wire, but they don't like it. And so that leaves me more strawberries. And so I've been able to harvest enough that I'm making a strawberry rhubarb jam tonight.
Delicious.
And but chicken wire is one strategy. The other one is row cover. You called it?
I call it remay or agribon, which are two different brands of it, kind of like Kleenex and facial tissue.
And there's different weights of that too.
Yeah, some of them are heavier duty, more meant for frost protection, and some are lighter duty.
Yes. And so I got a very light duty one to let as much light and water through. And I covered my sweet potato vines with that because, again, Willie the woodchuck was having his way with my sweet potato vines. And that actually has been very helpful in a way of controlling that. And then the other neat thing is I've had no pests. And I'll have to submit a photo of my radishes that were covered. They're like flawless. They're like better than in the store. But yeah, that's the strategy there. Oh, Ben, okay, so we've covered some of the things. In terms of disease, what are some of the tips that you know or you've used to help reduce the amount of disease?
Yeah, to reduce disease, especially fungal disease, fungus needs moisture and it needs warmth. And so,
We're giving it warmth right now.
yeah, the easiest way is to keep the foliage dry, especially overnight. The best time to water it is in the morning, and we have this tube here, so we never actually have to get the foliage wet to water it in that way. If you are going to use a hose or a watering can to water it, it's better to do it in the early part of the day so that the leaves have a chance to dry out before night, because once the night falls, it's likely that any moisture that's on the leaves is going to stay there overnight, which just gives any fungal spores that exist naturally in the environment more time to propagate themselves on the leaf area of the fruit.
And the other nice thing about watering early in the morning, and especially if it's going to be extremely hot and the sun's beating down, is the water will, if you're watering overhead, the water will have a chance to penetrate into the soil rather than evaporate. Like if you're watering in the heat of the day, you'd have more water loss.
Yeah, a lot of that water might just evaporate right off the soil and never get to the plant roots. So,
excellent, thank you.
yeah. Cool, so these are our smaller gardens. We call them the kids garden or the seed saving gardens. It's where we bring summer camps. And so we have a number of small beds, and what we've done is built a wooden frame, and then we put chicken wire on the ends where we never need access, and then we put these metal grates on the side. And this won't keep out a rabbit or a squirrel, but it keeps a deer from being able to get all the way in there. And then for here, we just have a pin that pulls out.
I like the design.
So that then the kids can get in there.
Yeah.
Because you want to protect it from the animals, but you don't want to make it inconvenient to work in yourself, because otherwise you don't take care of your spaces. So,
Ben, this looks absolutely fantastic, and I know that there are some rabbits that are very upset with you.
we had a lot of rabbits coming to this area, and because we have all of our kale and cabbage and collards here, those are all things that the bunnies, especially when they were young, would have feasted upon. So not only did we put metal stakes in, then we hung the grate just like the kids' garden, and we also added this 2-foot tall chicken wire and just attached it to the metal grate around to keep it out.
On all four sides, right?
On all four sides, yeah, because the rabbits will find the one side without it. We also put down black fabric that we had burned holes in as weed barrier here. So we just had the plants in the one spot, and now we don't have to weed around our desired plants. We just have to weed in the rows. So that's a way that we're excluding weeds, which could be classified as a pest as well. We also, are you seeing all the holes in the leaves?
And also too, there's little white butterflies I noticed. What are these? What are they?
Those are called cabbage moths, and their caterpillars are called cabbage loopers, and they will eat your kale, collards, and Brussels sprouts, and typically especially if it's your home garden, it's not that big of a deal because the caterpillars will eat and then mature and then fly away. And you have leaves which have some holes in them, but they're still perfectly good for eating.
For the most part.
For the most part. For food for sale, it's not as acceptable. And so you can either go through and pinch off the caterpillars as you go, or you could spray a product called BT, which is a bacteria which infects the caterpillar's gut. Or like Ben was mentioning earlier, what would you suggest for?
Like a row cover or a remake, especially before the butterflies come out, before the cabbage moths come out. If you were to cover the young cabbage or kale with a row cover and let them grow up to a reasonable size, there won't be any cabbage moths on them to eat the leaves. But at this size, I probably wouldn't have used row cover, but that would give them a head start. So you still would have a really decent harvest. But again, this looks absolutely fantastic there.
Thank you. And this crop here is being grown for a program we have at Kalamazoo Valley Community College called Food Share, Valley Food Share, which is a food box that is made available to students on a weekly basis.
Wow.
Yeah, so I worked with Christina and a couple other people involved in the project about selecting some crops early on this past winter. And we thought that collard greens, kale greens, and cabbages for this bed would be good choices. We're also going to be growing cucumbers and summer squash. We have onions and garlic going, and we'll be growing tomatoes and eggplant and peppers as well. So yeah, it's a program we're really excited about here at the Food Innovation Center, and we hope it's a great support for our students. And we have seen a lot of interest and a lot of students taking advantage of it as well.
That is excellent. High nutrition and a great value and really good taste, sounds like, too.
Yep.
Super. Just to show people what to do at the end rather than stuff at some time or other. Okay, well good. By now, your pots have reached their peak. Your plants will have started to go to seed, some of them especially your spinach and your radish. And I'll show you in just a moment how you can tell it's about the end of the season. The other thing, I don't know if you can notice color-wise, I'm going to take this cage, by the way, this is what has been protecting them from squirrels and other animals. They could actually get in here if they wanted to, but they would prefer to get their food the easiest way possible. So anyway, I'll take this off. It was a good woodchuck repellent. But I don't know if you can notice, this is actually the spinach. When it's too hot, it begins to go to seed with the variety we were using. And we're going to use this soil for the fall planting. So don't get rid of your soil, but you'll want to pull your plants out that are done. Your collard will continue to grow, but as I said before, the leaves are a little bit yellow, cast to the green, and that's because they've exhausted the soil. They've pretty much pulled out all the fertilizer and nutrients. So we're going to put some more fresh in. But I will show you, let's see, these are just the spinach. Then pull out. You could leave them in here and they go to seed, but they still would probably be better in your compost pile. And compost uses soil and plants like your green plants and then a carbon source to produce fertility in your soil. Hey, this is embarrassing. Here's a little tiny radish, but let's look next door. And here's another radish. So hopefully you've had a few more like this than like this. But these I'm going to take and put in my compost pile later on. But I'm just kind of cleaning this out. The only thing I'll leave in probably is the collard green, and also I have a couple of parsley that as it gets hot they won't produce either. But these are all going in the compost pile at home. Oh, except for the food part of it. And actually you can eat the greens. The greens are actually quite nutritious, but I wouldn't eat them raw. I would actually cook them to make them more tender and palatable. So, as you can see, the soil has a few weeds in there. I'm just going to loosen up the soil just a little bit. And I normally water it several times during the week. But we've had rain finally. I'm very thankful. I was about to do a rain dance. And I'm going to use a little of our fertilizer. The bone meal, feather meal. I think it also probably has some manure in here. But it's also been processed and treated so it's safe. And I'm just going to, whoops, this is quite a lot. You don't need much. Probably one good tablespoon, possibly two. I'm just going to sprinkle that around in the soil. And if you didn't have rain, you would just kind of lightly work that in. If you didn't have rain, you would water it back in and clean out some of these extra weeds. Whoops, I'm going to replant the one parsley. Chances are the parsley will produce, but it would be happier in cooler weather. But yeah. Make sure I tie this back up so it doesn't get wet. And this, I'm just going to water it. You could, in theory, just give it up altogether and take out even the collards and the parsley, but this will still produce a couple of good leaves. I still chop them up and add them to either a fruit smoothie or to my rice once a week or so. But that's really about all you'll need to do. And again, in a month, we'll be getting ready to plant for fall. So you'll get 2 harvests out of the same pot. Pretty cool.